Hey folks, I'm Pete, and this is Pete's Eats Cooking Videos. Today we're gonna make one of our favorites. We call it red ribs. These are ribs that are slow cooked in the oven. They're sweet, they're tangy, they're gucky, and they're fabulous. And you're gonna love them. I'm gonna show you how to make them right now. This is what you're gonna need to make these fabulous ribs. You're gonna need pork ribs, and I use the back ribs. The back ribs are better, I believe. You're gonna need some onions, some garlic, tomatoes in a can. I use both the tomatoes crushed and diced, some ketchup, a little bit of something sweet. I like to use corn syrup in this recipe. Also vinegar, pepper, and instead of salt, I use this Herbamare. It's a beautiful mixture, but you of course can use salt. I highly recommend you get a bottle of this. So let's begin. Okay, so I've chopped up the ribs, and I've done them into onesies. You know, you could do twosies. I like onesies because it gets more flavor on all sides. I'm just gonna season them up. So I'm gonna use the Herbamare. I'll put a little bit of that on. Also the pepper, a little bit of pepper. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put them under the broiler on high, and I'm gonna watch them carefully. I wanna get them nicely caramelized. They're not gonna be cooked, but the outside are like nice and crispy, kind of been caramelized. So that's been about 10 to 15 minutes, and you can see they're nicely getting caramelized on the outside. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip them over, and I'm going to season this side with salt and pepper or Herbamare, and then I'm gonna put them back in and get them nicely caramelized on the other side. So there you go. The ribs have been done on both sides, and they're ready to put in the sauce. Boy, they look good enough to eat just like that, eh? So what we're going to do is we're going to start making the sauce that these ribs are going to sit in for a couple of hours and turn out absolutely delicious. So I start with onions, and I use about one nice big onion for each rack of ribs. So in addition to the onions, I put garlic in, and I've got about one big clove of garlic, and I crush it. For each rack of ribs, one nice large clove of garlic. I'm gonna have to put a little bit of oil in there just to get them so they don't stick to the bottom. I don't need much because there's a lot of fat in the pork, obviously, so I'll put a little bit of oil in there, and I'll turn it on to a sort of a medium-high heat. And I'll also season those. So a little bit of pepper, and the salt or Herbamare, which I really like. And I think it's important to season the onions because I think taking the salt in at this point really adds to the flavor. So let's get these nicely softened up before we add the other ingredients. You need a nice thick pot, obviously, to cook this in because it's going to be in the oven for a long time. And a thinner pot, the ribs will burn and the sauce will burn. So a nice big thick pot is what you need. So here's a little trick with this recipe. I like to use diced tomatoes and the crushed tomatoes. The diced tomatoes, I wanna puree them. So what I do is I take a little bit of liquid out just to give myself a little bit of space. Of course you don't have to do it this way, but it saves a bit of time. And then I'm gonna puree these right in the can. So, you know, sometimes this makes a heck of a mess. Hopefully we'll be okay. Okay, so now let's make this sauce. So I'm gonna put about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard in. Stir that in. And then I'm going to add the diced tomatoes, which I've pureed already. The crushed tomatoes. Okay. I'm also gonna add some just plain old vinegar. Of course, you could use apple cider vinegar. You could use whatever kind of vinegar you like. I'm gonna add a touch of hot sauce, just nothing too crazy, just give it a little bit of heat, some Frank's Red Hot sauce. And the sky's the limit here. If you like soy sauce or Worcestershire sauce, you know, of course, just put that in, even barbecue sauce if you want it. Okay, and now I'm gonna put in some corn syrup, probably about a quarter cup of corn syrup. Okay, another ingredient that I really like to add is ketchup. There's something about ketchup that just really has a sweet tanginess to it. So I'm gonna put about, about an eighth of a cup. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this go for a while, and I wanna just check to see that it's got sweet and salty and sour and tangy. Once it has absolutely everything I want, then I'll put the ribs in and throw it in the oven. So I just want to make sure I balance all those flavors. After tasting the sauce, I think it's good. And so now I'm going to add the ribs. Okay, so that was actually 3 racks of ribs, and it fit this recipe perfectly, and it filled up the pot nicely so that it's just covered with the sauce. I'm gonna put it in the oven now at 325 degrees. I'm gonna watch them, and then they'll be absolutely delicious. So here you go. Here's the red ribs. They're sweet, they're tomatoey, they're savory, they're excellent, and we like to serve them on rice. Enjoy!